So I got a comment on my discussion of Return of the Obra Dinn. It says here, unfortunately, a lot of indie games don't have enough budget to fully flesh out the story, gameplay, and quality. And so I thought I'd respond to that in a video. And so I know that in the video I basically said I'm not a fan of indie games, and so I don't think this commenter is offended at all. It's just pointing out an obvious fact, which is that they don't have the budgets, and so um, I thought I would kind of give my thoughts a little bit deeper on that because I don't want people thinking that I just have a thing against indie games. One of the things I noticed in Metacritic, which is an aggregate website, it's they don't Metacritic doesn't review games; they just uh, find an aggregate score of professional reviewers. And it seems that the impression I get is that small development studios or single developers get a push on ratings because I've seen many games that were not that impressive with fairly high scores. And so the one that I've mentioned before is Dusk, which has a very, very high score for a first person shooter. And I thought it was very impressive that one developer was able to produce this game. But it doesn't compare at all to many of the first person shooters that got lower reviews. And I also think that some of these reviewers are possibly giving the game ratings based on cost. So if you went out and bought this digitally, it would be probably a lot less than a AAA title. And I don't really like that idea because what I care about is, and I get it, if it's a $5 game, they said, well, you're rating it based on $5. But for me, it's how much enjoyment do I get out of the game? And I didn't play Dusk for long because it's not a long game, and I didn't find much in the area of replayability with the game. Um, so another indie title which I thought was really good. I think I got this from 8-Bit Dough was Gorogoa, and this one I did look out there. I'm not sure what it's selling for on Nintendo, but I saw it selling other places for $5. So obviously I paid a lot more than $5 because I got a physical copy, um, which also includes, whoops, a instruction manual, which I'm always delighted by. This is a really neat game. It's a puzzle game, and again, I think this was developed by a single developer who clearly had a lot of artistic skills as well as musical skills, and it is a very dreamlike game. And I enjoyed it immensely for about 2 hours. And again, this doesn't really have a lot of replayability, so I give the guy a ton of credit for producing such a fantastic game. But it's a couple hours of fun. And does it compare to, say, The Witcher? Just in when I'm looking at how much fun I had, I played Witcher for God knows how many hours, probably way too many, and I loved the game. And it had a massive budget and a massive amount of developers. So how does it compare to Gorogoa? Well, for my money per for the amount of fun I had for the money I paid, and actually didn't pay that much for The Witcher. I don't. It might have been like $30 because it is a bit of an older game. But I got way more fun out of The Witcher because I spent hours and hours in this immersive world. And so, maybe another example would be the very obvious one, which is The Legend of Zelda, which is another AAA title, and played that one for a long time. And so I'll compare that to Freedom Planet, which got pretty good reviews. And Freedom Planet has kind of retro 90s style, looks a little bit like Sonic the Hedgehog from the original Genesis. I got bored really quick. It, if you're going to do something where I didn't hardly finish this, I didn't even get that far into it, and I just got bored. Um, it's hard for me to go back and play these old games. I grew up with classic games that about as classic as you can get. Games like Paperboy and Tron and things like that, and they have a lot of barcades, and I'll go there and I'll play them once or twice, and then I'm done. I'm kind of bored. I grew up with the Atari 800. Do I have any interest in playing those games? No, not at all. So taking it back with the basic gameplay that probably could have existed on the 90s in the 90s, it's for some people. It's not really for me. I get bored of it. The reason Return of Obra Dinn I enjoyed it so much was because of just the uniqueness of the gameplay, and because I just thought Lucas Pope did a brilliant job of executing it. I like the mystery, trying to solve a mystery, and but again, it was 2 or 3 hours, and that's it. Very little replayability. So even the best of what I would say the indie titles for me wouldn't compare to a game like The Witcher, where I probably put in 60, 70, possibly more hours as opposed to 2 or 3. I mean, it's possible that those 2 or 3 hours I enjoyed more than any 2 or 3 hours in The Witcher, but I'm not even sure if that's true because I really did enjoy The Witcher. So it's not that, and if you go out and you're like, okay, I really would like to play Gorogoa. I don't feel like paying $40 for a 2-hour experience. You can go out and spend $5, and it's a great game. I highly recommend playing it. And $5 I think is a reasonable price. And I understand it can be very difficult for reviewers. They don't want to sit there and bury indie titles because these are people who are trying their best to produce some alternative games. And I'm pointing out some of the my favorite games, which is Obra Dinn and Gorogoa. The problem is I kept coming across games like Freedom Planet, where I got bored very, very quickly. This is not the only indie title. This is by, let's see, who is this by? I'm not even sure now. And this may have been a development studio with, I really can't find out, with some money. I'm sure that it had more than Gorogoa or Obra Dinn, but I got bored. It really wasn't. It doesn't really harken me back to a certain age. Slow gameplay, repetitive. I much prefer playing modern games than these old games, and it's all a matter of preference. I don't begrudge anyone who loves playing retro games, and some people only want to play retro games, and that's cool. And I know indie titles are different from retro games, but they are often much simpler. Much as the commenter said, they have a much smaller budget, and they can't really do the things of a AAA studio. So that's kind of my thoughts on the indie games, and I guess my biggest problem is getting games like Freedom Planet that got very good reviews, playing it and being like, it's just not really deserving of those reviews, much higher than they deserve. Anyway, so that's my thoughts on indie games.